Not part of the story, but of course I gotta talk at least a little bit about the opening cutscene of Sonic Riders, cause it's so freaking cool. I wish more Sonic games could have some 2D animation opening cutscenes, cause it kinda makes it feel like it's like the anime OP or whatever, you know? It fits the aesthetic of Sonic very nicely. And honestly, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but modern Sonic's design, ironically, I think looks way, way better in 2D than it does in 3D. Which is weird because it was made when Sonic was going 3D. You'd think it would be optimized to look good in 3D, but personally, I have always felt that the Yuji Uekawa style 2D Sonic artwork has always looked way, way better than Sonic ever has when you take that design and then try to manifest it in 3D. Just look at these two images right here, one of a 2D illustration of Sonic and one of a 3D model. To me, it's like not even remotely close which one looks better. But that's just my opinion on that. I assume most people are going to disagree with me on that. And Sonic Riders is a game that pretty perfectly encapsulates what Sonic was all about at this period of time, with the style and trying to like actively go out of its way to be as cool as possible. We have definitely come far away from what Sonic was originally, which, while not exactly to my preference for the series, by this point, the Sonic series did find a new identity for itself that I think is also pretty good and works very well. This actually is one of the things I think is the strength of having classic Sonic and modern Sonic. We can have two different Sonics that kind of explore different interpretations of what Sonic could be. Classic Sonic could be more true to the original vision of the series, and then modern Sonic could take more advantage of this kind of stuff. That way you have fans of the different iterations of the Sonic games all being pleased with different games that cater towards different forms of Sonic. But that's a discussion for another time. Now let's talk about the story of Sonic Riders. And the story begins with our three main heroes looking for Chaos Emeralds for absolutely no reason. I think the writer of this game forgot that this isn't Dragon Ball and Sonic and friends don't regularly look for the Chaos Emeralds just because, but whatever, we're just gonna go with it. And of course Knuckles is here because for this game they flipped the coin and it landed on heads this time, which means that the Master Emerald and Angel Island do not exist and Knuckles is not the guardian of them in this game. Anyway, while Sonic and friends are looking for this Chaos Emerald, it turns out a group of other characters has managed to beat them to the punch. And these three thieves are getting away on their hoverboards called Extreme Gear, and Sonic goes after them. They, however, pay no mind to Sonic, who tries to get in their way, until Knuckles manages to knock one of them off their boards. Tails catches a glimpse of a symbol on the board that he makes note of, and then Sonic grabs the board from one of them and hops on to pursue after them. Not exactly sure why he does this, because he's Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm pretty sure he's faster than this board is, but the game is Sonic Riders and you ride on hoverboards, so he does it for no reason, whatever. And Sonic catches up to who appears to be the leader of the group, and he tries to deal with this guy. But whoever this is really knows his way around a hoverboard, and Sonic is having trouble dealing with him. He manages to maybe kind of get the upper hand for a moment, but it turns out that the other dude is way more skilled with Extreme Gear than Sonic is, and he totally blows Sonic away, and the group manages to escape. He even goes so far as to mock Sonic, saying, "You're the fastest thing in the world? Pfft, get real." And it's a pretty rare occurrence for someone to beat Sonic in a competition of speed, so whoever this guy is, he's the real deal. And as it turns out, Sonic is pretty okay with this, as it's something cool and interesting that could be fun. That is a pretty solid opening cutscene there, I must say. The CG animation quality is pretty nice, it's very cool, it's very stylish, sets up these new characters well, and this new rival character for Sonic, because of course, this is a 2000s era Sonic game, so we have to introduce a new rival character in every other game. And as I said before, this game is just oozing with that 2000s Sonic coolness style all over the place, and it executes it pretty damn well, I would say. Anyway, sometime later, Eggman has a broadcast on public television, I guess? And he announces that he's going to be hosting the X-World Grand Prix, a race on Extreme Gear to determine who is the fastest in the world. But not just that, participants wanting to enter the competition have to submit a Chaos Emerald as the entry fee, and the winner takes everything. Yeah, that one infamous line makes a bit more sense when you go with the Japanese version, but anyway. Obviously Eggman is up to no good, so Sonic wants to check things out. But Eggman also announces 3 competitors who have already entered the race, who, as it turns out, are the thieves Sonic ran into the other night. And so it's like, the competition to see who's the fastest in the world. That dude gave Sonic quite a bit of shit for not being so fast after all. So here's a chance for Sonic to not only deal with whatever Eggman is up to, but also beat this guy and set the record straight. So, of course, our heroes join the Grand Prix. And you know who else joined the Grand Prix? Amy. And right here, I want to make a little note of everyone's outfits in Sonic Riders, because everyone's been given a slight minor redesign that's kind of given them a bit more of like sporty gear to them, you know, wearing sunglasses and goggles and different shoes on the characters. But of course, that's because for some reason it's like a rule in the Sonic universe that male characters have to be naked, but women have to wear clothes. But as a side effect of that, all the females get to wear, like, cool sporty outfits in Sonic Riders, and I'm just gonna say it here, I think Amy's Rider's outfit is way better than her standard outfit, and I think it should just completely replace the red dress that she normally wears. Don't at me. Anyway, Tails starts to wonder about that symbol that he saw earlier on the board of one of those dudes they ran into the other night. That symbol is apparently the symbol of Babylon, which in the Sonic universe was an island that floated in the sky that was home to an ancient civilization of the Babylon Rogues, a group of thieves that would steal treasure from around the world. According to legend, the Babylonians brought upon themselves the wrath of the gods for stealing so much, and they submerged their floating island under the ground, where apparently the ancient treasure of the Babylonians still remains hidden to this day. Oh, and also apparently the Babylonians were experts when it comes to extreme gear, which is a little bit strange that an ancient civilization would know how to use hoverboards, but sure, I guess. And can I just say, like, this whole setup here of, you know, we're basically getting some exposition of the backstory of the 3 characters that we ran into before, that these are the Babylon Rogues. Sure, whatever, that's fine, but do we really need another ancient civilization in the Sonic series? There are so goddamn many of these things. We have the Echidnas, there was the Nocturnus clan, now we have the Babylonians, there's fucking the ancient civilization in Blaze's dimension who also were on a floating island called Sky Babylon, like a lot of similar ideas being shared here, as well as future Sonic games that have even more ancient civilizations. Like, there's way too fucking many of these things in this goddamn universe. And also the fact that we have Babylon Garden, which is another floating island in the sky when we already have Angel Island. It's just, it kind of feels like we're running out of ideas with the Sonic series, of just we keep redoing the same shit over and over. So one of the Babylon Rogues shows up, and she takes a look at Sonic's gear that Tails has customized. You know, obviously he's Tails, he knows machines, he can spruce up a gear and make it run more efficiently and stuff. But this character, Wave, is the Babylon Rogues' own mechanic, and, you know, according to legend, the Babylon Rogues are experts with extreme gear, and so if there's anyone that knows how to tune a gear, it's her, obviously. And according to her, Tails has done a laughably terrible job of setting up Sonic's gear, and she basically just makes fun of him and then leaves. Wow, what a dick. But it does a pretty good job of setting up Tails' little story arc in this game. Because, you know, mechanics is like his thing. That's what he's always been good at. And now someone comes in that's apparently an even better mechanic than him, saying that he doesn't know shit about what he's doing. Obviously, that's going to make Tails upset and work as pretty decent setup for later on. But now that we've gotten the rundown of who these new mysterious characters are, why don't we go back and start checking out their side of the story, because Sonic Riders is a spin-off game that is very, very true to the main Sonic series in many ways, and one of them is the story structure that it takes, where you have 2 stories with 3 characters assigned to each story. And normally when you play through the game, you play through the stories one at a time to see both sides of it, but for the purposes of this video, I think it's easier and more elegant to just do everything all in one go. So why don't we rewind a bit and check out what's going on the Babylon Rogues side of things. We begin with an establishing shot of the airship the Babylon Rogues live in, with a mysteriously egg-shaped man heading toward it. And then we get Jet, the leader of the Babylon Rogues, who is taking a look at this cube here. However, he is interrupted when Storm, the muscle of the Babylon Rogues, bursts into the room and makes a whole huge commotion. And then Wave follows in shortly after, giving Storm a hard time. The two are curious about the cube Jet has and ask if this is the legendary key to Babylon Garden, which Jet confirms that it is. Wave goes to get a hold of the cube, but then Storm lifts it above her head and is like, "Oh no, you're gonna do some weird fucking experiments with this thing if I let you have it." And then the two start bickering back and forth with each other. There's definitely an establishment here of these two butting heads quite often, and Jet's just like, oh Jesus Christ, these fucking idiots that I have to work with. There's a weird kind of relationship here going on with the Babylon Rogues because they seem to think very, very highly of Jet and like really, really respect him, and it seems like Storm and Wave kind of like compete with each other to get into Jet's good favor, which is the kind of thing that you would normally do with like a really imposing, powerful character, but Jet isn't exactly that, as we'll see as we go further into the story. Anyway, the reason that Storm barged into Jet's room in the first place is because he wanted to tell them that someone called Dr. Eggman is here to see him over something. Apparently, Eggman has been doing some research, and he's already familiar with Babylon Garden and the fact that Jet has the key to it, and he apparently wants to help Jet find the ancient treasure of Babylon. But in order to do that, they're going to have to find Babylon Garden, which is going to require the 7 Chaos Emeralds. To which Jet is like, oh, all we gotta do is steal some gems, no problem, we're the Babylon Rogues, we're expert thieves, this'll be a piece of cake. And Eggman is like, maybe there's one other problem along the way, Sonic the Hedgehog. But Jet's like, Sonic, fastest thing on Earth. Whatever, I don't care, no one can beat me on an extreme gear. And as we already saw, Jet's confidence is not just for show. So now from here, you can basically figure out how things happened. Eggman set up the X-World Grand Prix, so that way Jet could win it and take all the Chaos Emeralds and then use them to find Babylon Garden. So now that we got some context on the Babylon Rogues and we have a bit of understanding of what's going on from their end, let's get back to where we were at present in the story. Everyone's participating in the X-World Grand Prix to try to get all the Chaos Emeralds, and prior to their race, Knuckles and Storm run into each other, and this is their time to settle the score after Knuckles kinda kicked Storm's ass earlier the other day. But all these two idiots manage to do is destroy this one robot here, and then their fight gets cut short when the race is about to begin, so they're like, we'll settle this on the track. Yeah, if you haven't been able to tell at this point, Storm is like your stereotypical blockhead, meathead, muscle-type character, not the brightest in the world, and of course he butts heads with Knuckles, as they're both the brawny characters of their teams. Certainly as far as the rivalries they're trying to set up in Sonic Riders, this one is by far the weakest. It's mainly just a joke. But I think that's relatively okay, you know, gives you some levity into the story a bit. And I'd say that Storm works decently well as a rival for Knuckles, because Knuckles is always like, alright, let's go time, let's fight. And, you know, it works for him to have someone who is just like that he can finally duke it out with. And despite the fact that Storm is a Babylon Rogue and has probably been riding Extreme Gear for years, and Knuckles is not exactly the most elegant character that really has an understanding of machinery, somehow Knuckles manages to beat him in the race because he's a main character. And then Storm goes back to the Babylon airship and he's like, oh boss! And he rushes into Jet's room again. He's like, I lost, I'm so sorry. He must have had a special gear or something like that. And then Wave comes in and is like, are you insinuating that you lost because of my gears? That's impossible, they're always perfectly calibrated. You just suck at riding. And then they have more bickering back and forth. And again, Jet's like, shut the hell up. I have something I want to talk about, which is that Jet does not trust Eggman for obvious reasons. He's just this shady dude that shows up and is like, oh hey, I know all about you and your ancient civilization and what's going on, and I'm here to help you find the treasure for no particular reason. Obviously, it's Eggman. He's up to something. Obviously, he wants the treasure. So Jet's like, we should investigate into these things. Storm, I want you to go to Eggman's base and see what you can't find. And Storm does just that. Meanwhile, Jet and Wave go back to participating in the tournament. But Wave is all anxious. She's like, oh, where's Storm? He's taking a long time. He should have been back by now. But Jet's like, you need to just calm down. It's fine. But then Wave starts nagging at Jet of like, you're the leader of the Babylon Rogues. You should think more about blah, blah, blah. And they like turn this into a whole bit where she's just like going in super fast forward. And it's like, this is some goofy shit right here. If you haven't been able to tell, Sonic Riders actually makes an effort to be a lot more comedic than the Sonic series has been up to this point. If you really think about it and you go back to previous Sonic games, they don't really make that many jokes very often. Like, yeah, you do have your comic relief characters like Big or the Chaotix, but generally most of the time the Sonic games have been pretty straight-faced so far, and Sonic Riders is kind of an outlier in that way where there's lots of like active attempts at jokes and goofy stuff here, which I guess is fine for the most part. It's a spin-off, so it's okay for it to have a slightly different tone than the main series. But I do find it odd considering how, like, the whole aesthetic of Sonic Riders is all, like, cool and stylish and stuff, but then you get into the story and it's mostly just a big joke. A little bit of tonal dissonance going on there, like, you know, the Sonic series has done just fine without really having much comedy up to this point. I really don't know why they felt the need to shove it in here, but they did. Anyway, while Wave is nagging at Jet, he sees Sonic practicing over there, and he's literally just like a bully. He's like, I'm gonna go make fun of him. And so Jet sneaks away from Wave because this is a cartoon farce. Anyway, Jet shows up while Sonic and friends are practicing, and he goes on this spiel about how Sonic might be the fastest when it comes to running along the ground, but when we're talking extreme gear and being the fastest in the air, it's a totally different story. You have to become one with the wind in order to truly master extreme gear, and without wings, you got no chance of that, son. And then he bugs out, and it's literally just like he showed up just to make fun of our heroes. Like, him and Wave are apparently just asshole characters. I don't know if they're supposed to be likable, but their behavior has been just that of straight-up bullies, which is not the best, exactly. You know, from their perspective, they're a goofy trio of knuckleheads, but from Sonic's perspective, he's just a dickhead. It's also weird the way that Jet is portrayed. From the Sonic story, he's like this cool, imposing, powerful guy, but then from the Babylon Rogue story, he's just a doofus leading two morons. Anyway, after Jet leaves, then they're like, geez, what's his problem? And Tails is still caught up about Wave making fun of him for not really knowing how to properly tune a gear and stuff. And he's like, sorry, Sonic, the reason you can't beat Jet is because I can't tune your gear properly. And Sonic's like, it's fine, don't worry about it. You always do your best, Tails, it's no problem. But Tails is like, no, it's not okay. I need to really figure this out and make sure you got the best gear possible to give you the best shot at beating this dude. Obviously, Tails is really worked up over someone making fun of his mechanic skills, which I think is a pretty good conflict to give Tails, as that's something that he's always been very confident in. I mean, fuck, he's even kind of been considered on par with Eggman in some instances, so introducing a new mechanic character that kind of makes Tails feel a little bit inadequate, I think that works pretty well. Anyway, the tournament has been progressing, and now we're all the way up to the finals, and before the event starts, Storm returns from Eggman's base, now with some data that he stole from Eggman. Storm managed to get an entry from Eggman's diary, where he talks about how the Babylon Rogues think that the ancient treasure of Babylon is just like gems or money or whatever, but in reality, it is the ancient Babylonians' advanced technology. Apparently, they were a super advanced civilization, and their technology is the thing that's really left over that's of high value. But then Jet, upon hearing this, is like, oh, I don't give a fuck about advanced technology or how we might be able to use it to take over the world. So, never mind, forget this shit. But then Wave is like, whoa, Jet, hold on a second there. Think about it. Ancient technology, that's probably really valuable. We could probably sell that for a lot of cash. And then Jet's like, oh, yes. You see what I was saying before about how Jet is not like a cool, imposing leader character and how he's kind of just as dumb as his two underlings? I find it weird that they show so much respect for him when he's clearly kind of an idiot. I assume this has to do with Jet's father. He mentions him earlier in the story, and he does have that picture of what I assume is his dad over his desk in his office. So I assume that Jet's dad was the previous leader of the Babylon Rogues, and maybe he demanded a lot of respect, and then he died or whatever, and now Jet's in charge of the Babylon Rogues, and out of respect for his dad, Wave and Storm show him a similar amount of respect. I think it's pretty safe to say that that's supposed to be the implication here, which I like, you know, it kind of gives the character a little bit of history to him beyond what we just see of him in the events of this game. I wouldn't mind one day getting to see Jet's dad in like a Sonic Riders prequel or something like that. That could be pretty cool. But anyway, Jet's like, alright, we're back in this thing, let's go do the finals. And then they have the opening ceremony where everyone presents their Chaos Emeralds. And once again, Jet is just being a dick to Sonic, where he's like, ugh, I'm surprised you managed to make it this far with your level of skill. It's like, Jesus Christ, guy, why do you gotta be so mean for no reason? Anyway, back to the finals. Sonic is looking like he's gonna beat Jet, but, as it turns out, there's a bomb on Sonic's board, and Wave blows it up, and thus Jet is able to cross the finish line uncontested. And of course he has to give Sonic one last, like, yeah, that's right, you stay on the ground where you belong. Jesus, what a fucking asshole. Yeah, as it turns out, earlier in the story, when Wave was checking out Sonic's board, she planted a bomb on it, and actually, while she was making fun of Tails aloud, internally, she was actually pretty impressed by the work this kid had managed to do on the gear, despite the fact that he was an amateur. So in her case, her being mean to Tails there was meant to be a cover, so they wouldn't notice the bomb she planted on his board. Okay, at least it's justified in that instance. But Jet is still an asshole. And obviously this is supposed to be a thing of like, the Babylon Rogues are shitty characters, they're playing dirty and whatever, but to be fair, at the beginning of the story, Eggman does announce that the tournament has no rules, so really, if you think about it, they're just playing smart. That's just a good way to ensure your victory. If it's not against the rules, then it's totally fair game, play to win, you know what I mean? But back to the story, Jet now uses the key to Babylon Garden with the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and he uses it to bring Babylon Garden out from being submerged under the earth to once again floating in the sky. Which I just want to say again that it feels like we're just reusing ideas over and over, because this means that the Babylonians set it up that you need the Chaos Emeralds to reveal Babylon Garden, which is like, did they also have access to the Chaos Emeralds? What about the Echidnas? Were these ancient civilizations existing at different times? Why does every single fucking thing in this universe revolve around these goddamn rocks? Like, yeah, it's Sonic, Chaos Emeralds, they're the big thing, but like, Jesus Christ, it seems like literally every single thing that has ever happened in this universe has revolved around these things, and subsequently also revolved around Sonic. It makes the universe feel very unnatural, like everything is just forced to revolve around these same couple of ideas over and over again, and I'm just not really a fan of it. And then Eggman steals the key from him, and he makes his way toward Babylon Garden, and Amy tries to stop him by grabbing onto the Eggmobile, and then everyone's like, oh god, after him! And so the Babylon Rogues chase after him in their airship, and Sonic and friends follow in after them in the tornado. And Sonic sees Eggman making his way toward the treasure, but before he goes in after him, Tails is like, wait, Sonic, take this. It is a specially custom-built gear that Tails made. This is the payoff to Tails' arc here, as, you know, in the background he's been worrying so much about properly learning how to deal with gears and stuff like that, and this is the fruits of all that labor he's been doing in the background, making this the ultimate extreme gear. Will it actually enable Sonic to beat Jet? I guess we're gonna find out, as while Sonic is going after Eggman, Jet also starts the pursuit of him and is like, yo, get out of my way, you won't be able to catch him, leave this to me. And Sonic is like, oh really? We'll see about that. Let me show you what it means to be the fastest in the world. And of course, he manages to beat Jet in the race, and even throws Jet's words right back at him of how you have to become one with the wind in order to truly master extreme gear. Well, if there's anyone that's one with the wind, it's of course going to be Sonic. He doesn't need wings in order to be able to do it. Doesn't matter if it's on the ground or in the air, Sonic is the fastest in the world. And then Sonic confronts Eggman, who's just about to open the door to the treasure of Babylon, but he's like, not so fast, I have Amy here. Apparently he just shoved her in that bush before Sonic showed up. What the fuck? And also, I don't understand his threat here because he's just like holding Amy. He doesn't like have a weapon pointed at her or anything, so what's he gonna do to her? Sonic could just attack him and Amy would be perfectly fine. And in fact, that's exactly what Sonic does. But he doesn't just attack him, no. He uses his extreme gear and his attunement with the wind to blow Eggman away in a tornado. Nice little payoff for this whole thing of, you know, Sonic has to become one with the wind, learn how to master extreme gear, all that. I think it works pretty well, and then Sonic gives the key to Babylon Garden back to Jet, and then the Babylon Rogues head over to retrieve the treasure. And while Sonic and friends are about to head back home, it turns out that Amy is quite upset over Sonic attacking Eggman while she was right there and having her get caught in that tornado. And then we end on the gag of Amy angrily chasing Sonic around with the hammer, which, by the way, how many frickin' Sonic games are we gonna end on this joke? There are so many that end like this. It's a bit overdone at this point, I would say, and they're gonna keep doing it even in future Sonic games. Like I said before, it kinda seems like they're running out of ideas. But story's not quite over yet, as we basically have like a last story type thing, where the Babylon Rogues open the vault towards the treasure, but something is going on. And so Sonic and the crew come to check out what's up, and then everybody runs into a giant genie creature thing. And at first it might seem like some sort of weird magical creature, but as it turns out, as Eggman mentioned in his diary, the Babylonians actually were masters of ancient technology, and when you attack the genie in the gameplay, the whole facade of this magical world falls apart, and you realize that this is all like virtual holograms and stuff. And everybody works together to defeat the genie thing, and then they finally get access to the treasure of Babylon. But then Eggman shows up with his fucking pistols, and he's like, "Alright everyone, back away, give me the treasure." And Sonic and Jet, upon seeing the treasure, are like, "Yeah, sure, take it, Eggman," and they throw it to him, where it turns out that the treasure of Babylon is just a carpet. And Eggman is like, "I set up the World Grand Prix and did all this shit just to get a fucking carpet? Are you fucking kidding me?" And then he has his little cartoon fall over there. But then Tails notices that this is not just a carpet, no, in fact, there's a little bit more to it than that. As it turns out, this carpet is an original prototype Extreme Gear, a magic flying carpet, but it's actually powered by ancient Babylon technology. That's how they've been masters of extreme gear since ancient times. They had the first things that kinda functioned a bit like an extreme gear, and that just continued into today, where those eventually got turned into hoverboards. So the idea here is that the legends of genies and magic carpets and all that stuff, it was actually the ancient Babylonians the whole time, and their advanced technology, and people of the time not understanding that and thinking they were some sort of powerful magical beings. So really, there is no treasure of Babylon, and all this was for nothing. But we had a fun adventure along the way. And then we have our final meeting with all the characters where Jet's like, I'm gonna go back to stealing treasure around the world. There was an inscription around the carpet that said that they made that thing so they could more easily steal treasure. And it's like, you know, some things never change, so it's time to get back to what our people do best. And then we end on one final little back and forth between Sonic and Jet, where Jet's like, you know, you might have beat me this time, but watch out, because next time the Babylon Rogues are coming for your ass, Sonic. And Sonic's basically like, I'm looking forward to it, and then they head their separate ways. Yeah, it's not really too much of a story. There's not a whole lot that happens here. But I think for what it's going for, the story of Sonic Riders is fairly effective, I would say. The rivalry between Sonic and Jet is decently done, and even the rivalry between Wave and Tails works pretty well to establish that, you know, he doesn't feel confident in his ability to work on gear, but then he makes this souped-up special custom gear for Sonic to prove that he really knows what he can do, and it's with that gear that Sonic is able to beat Jet in the race. And I also like how by the end Sonic and Jet don't really necessarily become friends in the same way that Sonic does with a lot of other characters that start off as enemies or rivals of his. They kind of have a bit of mutual respect for each other, but Jet's still like, I'm gonna fucking kick your ass, bro. Now that Sonic has managed to surpass Jet and has proven that he is in fact the fastest in the world, Jet's like, I'ma fucking improve, I'ma get better, and I'm gonna come back for you and prove that I'm the fastest in the world. It works decently well, I think. I like the little rivalry between Sonic and Jet. And by the way, has anyone else noticed that this whole setup is basically a mimicking of Sonic and Shadow from Sonic Adventure 2 and the way that they interact with each other, and even the way that this is set up to be like Sonic's arc through the story? Because you have the first meeting with the characters where they steal a Chaos Emerald and Sonic goes after them and they try to have a conflict, but Sonic gets shown up as this new character has special skills that Sonic doesn't know how to do, and they manage to get away from him with that. And then they have their second conflict with each other, which is mainly indecisive, but then we have the final conflict once and for all, where now Sonic has mastered the new skill that this character has introduced, and now he manages to one-up them and reach new heights. It's basically the exact same thing as Shadow in SA2. Even that final shot between Sonic and Jet is pretty familiar in a certain way, now isn't it? And in fact, a lot of elements of the game are very similar to Sonic Adventure 2. Like I said earlier, the structure of it, where you got the two campaigns, the hero and the Babylons, and there's 3 characters on each one, and everyone is a rivalry. Sonic and Jet, Wave and Tails, Storm and Knuckles. You can definitely tell that when making this game, they were looking at SA2 as reference material. This story of Sonic Riders definitely does manage to capture the feel and spirit of the Sonic series at the time. I mean, it even has the fucking final boss with the giant monster creature at the end. So while not the greatest story in the world by any means, I would say the story of Sonic Riders is pretty decent for the story of a spin-off Sonic racing game. They certainly put a lot more work into this than they fucking needed to. It's a fucking racing game. You could have just said everybody's racing and that's the story. But they wanted to go the extra mile and be a bit more ambitious, which is what Sonic Team was all about at this time. So yeah, that's the story of Sonic Riders. Pretty okay, I would say. Not anything to write home about, but enjoyable enough to get the job done. On to Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, and the story begins with a strange meteor crashing into this facility here, where it takes the form of this weird ring-shaped rock thing, and that rolls in front of a robot in a big old lineup of robots, and it seems to activate all these robots and send them on the move toward something. And then we catch up with our main trio. We hear on the radio that apparently a bunch of robots from a company called Mediotech are going around the world causing a bunch of havoc. And we see that Sonic also has one of those ring-shaped meteorites, and he mentions that it fell last night, and they picked it up, and they have no idea what this thing is. And while these 3 are minding their own business, the security system seems to detect this meteorite, and a bunch of robots start attacking the trio. This eventually leads into their car blowing up, and Sonic falling out of a building, but he seems to realize that this weird stone has some sort of power over gravity. And of course, Sonic being Sonic, he's just like, cool, and he slaps it on his wrist, and he starts going. Our 3 manage to escape the robot's pursuit long enough to catch their breaths and try to figure out what's going on, and they just happen to run into Amy, who has also been being chased by these robots after she picked up another one of these strange meteorites. And so Tails connects the dots here that the robots must be after these things if they've been chasing after both Sonic and Amy, who have them. So they decide it's probably a good idea to investigate Mediotech, the company responsible for all these robots. And by the way, one quick thing about Mediotech is that the company in the game is always referred to as Meteortech, but in the actual dialogue, the characters always say Mediotech, so I don't exactly know what it's supposed to be, but I'm gonna go with what the characters say, so Mediotech it is. Anyway, Mediotech is a company that provides the world with security robots, and so Sonic and the crew head to one of their factories to figure out what the heck is going on. But while they're sneaking around, the security system picks up some intruders, though it's not Sonic and friends. It's actually the Babylon Rogues, and we see that Jet also has himself one of these stones, allowing him to also manipulate gravity just like Sonic.
久しぶりだな、ソニック・ザ・ヘッジホッグ。ジェット。お久しぶりね、おちっちゃん。ウェーブ。あの時の蹴りをつけてやるわいな。望むところだ。 バビロン盗賊団。
pretty cool reintroduction for Jet and the Babylon Rogues, I like that. And Jet immediately starts yelling at Amy to return something called the Ark of the Cosmos to him, but she has no idea what he's talking about. Obviously, he's referring to the stone. Apparently, the Babylon Rogues have a bit more of an idea of what these things are. And Sonic is like, whoa, cool it, Jet, but he is immediately just back to where we were at the end of the first Sonic Riders, where he's like, alright, today's the day that I prove that I'm the fastest in the world. But this whole thing gets cut short when the security system starts going off and our characters have to get out of there. They're trying to figure out what's going on with all the robots going berserk after all. But now that we've reached this point and we've been reintroduced to the Babylon Rogues, why don't we once again rewind a bit and see what they've been up to. We begin in some ancient ruins where Jet is grabbing one of these mysterious stones. And this is not just a coincidence that this is here, this is like set up, there's traps and everything, so clearly whoever left this here knew what it was. And Wave sees a shooting star fly overhead, and she tries to make a wish. And Storm's like, what the hell are you doing? And she explains about, you know, making wishes on shooting stars, and Storm's just like, what are you, a little kid? But then he sees that Jet is also doing the same thing. And Jet is wishing for the power to beat Sonic. And then we see another shooting star, and another, and another, and that last one seems like it was pretty close as it causes a massive explosion. And that triggers the trap that was holding this stone, which causes some boulders to start falling onto the Babylon Rogues, but then Jet, in a similar way to Sonic, learns that this stone has the power to manipulate gravity. And Jet, upon learning this, is extremely excited. He's like, hell yeah, dude, my wish has already been granted. And then the three get out of there. They regroup on their airship, where Wave does some research on the stone, and she realizes that it is called the Ark of the Cosmos, and these are engine units for the Babylon Garden developed by their ancient ancestors with their advanced technology. And upon analysis, she realizes that these things are capable of warping the fabric of space-time and thus manipulating gravity, and apparently they're even capable of allowing someone to warp across space. Also, apparently, there are 5 Arks of the Cosmos, with one of them kind of being like the master unit that attracts all the other ones. And Jet is immediately, of course, like, well, then we gotta get all of them. Wave, get on making a detector as soon as you can. And then Storm, in his classic style, bursts into the room making a whole big commotion where he shows Jet that he saw on a news report a robot stealing another one of the Ark of the Cosmos. And in case you don't recognize it, that is the one that Amy eventually gets her hands on. And now we get to see how that ended up happening. The Babylon Rogues are going after this robot to get this Ark of the Cosmos, but Jet ends up kicking it far away, and he's like, oh shit, I gotta go chase that thing down now. But by the time he manages to catch up to it, Amy had already found the Ark of the Cosmos incidentally and picked it up and started taking it with her, which is why she's being chased by the robots. And Jet was actually there when she met up with Sonic and friends and is like, God damn it, some fucking girl got the Ark of the Cosmos, I'm gonna have to get that back. And of course, he's also taken aback by the fact that he sees Sonic there. This is an opportunity for him to settle the score. And now we're back to where we were before. The Babylon Rogues have followed the Sonic's crew in order to get the Arks of the Cosmos from them, but that has to be put on hold so they can get away from the security robots. However, while everyone else is heading towards the central control system of the factory to see what's going on, Storm ends up blocking Amy and is like, oh no you don't, give back the Ark of the Cosmos. And then Amy's like, get the hell out of my way, and gives him a good whack with her hammer, and she starts to make her getaway while Storm chases after her. Catching now back up with Sonic, Jet is surprised that Sonic is also able to manipulate gravity using the power of the Ark of the Cosmos. But of course he's Sonic, he can do anything, so that's not really too surprising. And we see in the central control room of this factory that, oh lo and behold, it's Eggman. And he has no idea what the hell is going on until he gets sent flying by Jet and Sonic racing against each other to reach him. And everyone's like, Eggman, what are you doing here? And he's like, what am I doing here? I own this company, of course. Which is quite a surprise to everybody, so I assume that Eggman is like secretly the head of Mediotech, because I can't imagine that anyone would buy robots from the guy that has tried to take over the world a dozen times at this point. I mean, he also did sell security robots in Sonic Battle, but I also found that weird. I actually think that this makes a lot more sense that Eggman is secretly in charge of a company where he sells robots, and that's how he makes a ton of his money in order to fund all the shit that he does. You know, it's something if you want to look into it that far, which they probably didn't when coming up with this. But anyway, of course everyone's like, so this whole thing with the robots rampaging, this is all you're doing, isn't it, Eggman? But Eggman's like, no, actually, this is not my doing. Something's going on, and I'm not even sure exactly what it is. All he knows, apparently, is that the robots have some leader that is guiding them and telling them all what to do. So for a second, Sonic is like, I guess Eggman doesn't have anything to do with this, until Eggman notices the Ark of the Cosmos on Sonic's wrist. He's like, oh, what's that you got there, Sonic? And then it's like, okay, Eggman, so you clearly do know what the fuck is going on, so why don't you explain things for real this time? And Eggman now explains that Mediotech's robots are all controlled by the mother computer, and the mother computer is powered by another one of the Arks of the Cosmos. And apparently the robot that is leading all the other ones also has an Ark of the Cosmos in it. Somehow. Eggman isn't even sure of how that happened. I presume that's the one that we saw in the opening cutscene that rolled up against that robot, and I guess somehow that ended up accidentally getting inserted into the robot or something? It's very vague. We don't really know what the fuck happened there. But all the robots are now going on a rampage hunting for the Arks of the Cosmos, and Jet explains that it's because they are all drawn together, and so the one being in the mother computer is actively seeking out the other ones by having the robots look for them. And it's in this moment that Jet realizes, oh yeah, we were here to get the Ark of the Cosmos from Amy. Where the hell did you go? And Storm is also missing. And just at that moment, Eggman's computer apparently manages to track down where the leader robot is, who, as it turns out, is pursuing after Amy and Storm. So now checking up with these two and seeing what's going on, Storm is still trying to get the Ark of the Cosmos back from Amy, and she's like, Jesus Christ, give up already. Fine, you want the fucking rock? Take it. And she throws it at his face, because once again, this is a lot more comedic than the Sonic series normally is. And of course, in the Riders games, we have temperamental Amy, and she gets all pissed off at Storm that, like, because he's been chasing her around, she got separated from Sonic, so it's his responsibility to get her out of here, and he's just like, I guess I have to go along with what she says because she's yelling at me. But that is when the leader robot shows up to take the Ark of the Cosmos. However, it ends up just exploding for some reason, and so Storm is just like, hell yeah, another Ark of the Cosmos, and he takes it out of the robot and gets the hell out of there. And it's worth noting that Storm mentions that this is just like the stone they found at the Gigantic Rocks. And this is when Sonic and crew show up to check on Amy and make sure she's okay, and she's all pissed that it took Sonic so long to get to her, which is a cute little moment, actually. I like the animation there of her beating on Sonic. Anyway, Amy explains to the others what happened, and they all get their bearings, and they decide that in order to deal with this situation and stop the robot rampage once and for all, they're gonna have to get the Ark of the Cosmos out of Mediotech's mother computer, but they have no idea where that is. But then Amy mentions the Gigantic Rocks that Storm talked about, and then Knuckles is like, oh shit, I know where that is. Apparently it's a very well-known location in the realm of treasure hunters, and he talks about how there's apparently a legendary shooting star that grants wishes that is being held there, and they should go check it out. Maybe there they can figure out what these Arks of the Cosmos really are. By the way, in the English translation, they refer to the Gigantic Rocks as just the Gigan Rocks, but I'm just gonna go with the original Japanese version. So all of our heroes go out to check this place out, and we get a little bit of a tease that maybe the leader of the robots isn't done for after all. Catching up with the Babylon Rogue, Storm returns with the 2 Arks of the Cosmos he get, and Jet is like, nice job, Storm, good work. Meanwhile, Wave has been analyzing more of the ancient legends about the Arks of the Cosmos, and she comes upon another interesting piece of information about them, where apparently the ancient Babylonians removed the Arks of the Cosmos from Babylon Garden intentionally, as they were worried if they left them going, then it would cause something called the Lightless Black to completely consume everything. And then Jet and Wave are talking about, like, Lightless Black, what could that possibly mean? Meanwhile, we see that Eggman is on the ship, kind of checking things out, and somehow, I have no fucking idea how he does this, he managed to sneak into the room and steal their 2 Arks of the Cosmos and get out of there with nobody noticing. What the fuck? They were right on Jet's desk in the middle of the room with everybody standing there. How the fuck did he do that? Obviously, this is just some cartoon malarkey, but that is a serious stretch. Like, what the fuck? And by the way, the Eggmobile here is just straight up the model from SA1 being reused. Like, Jesus Christ, you can see how low poly it is compared to everything else. Were they really too lazy to bother making a new Eggmobile model, or at least, like, use the one from Sonic Heroes so it would be more comparable in poly count or something? This sticks out like a sore thumb. Anyway, obviously the Babylon Rogues go after Eggman, and now we catch up with Sonic and friends at the Gigantic Rocks, at the same site that we found the Babylon Rogues at earlier in the story. Knuckles is all like, whoa, what the hell? The Star Shard is supposed to be right here on this pedestal. Of course, we already know what happened to it, and then Tails is caught up looking at the mural in the background. Certainly looks a little bit familiar, doesn't it? Tails refers to this thing as the Divine Wings, and apparently there's a legend about the gods riding upon the Divine Wings throughout the heavens. Tails is very curious about this whole thing, and he asks Knuckles if he can't read the inscription on it, which apparently Knuckles can. Oh my god, look at this, actually using the treasure hunting part of Knuckles' character for like the first time ever to actually do something. Anyway, Knuckles reads the inscription and it talks about how the Divine Wings lost its plumes, quote unquote, to the lightless black, and how it fell to the earth. Apparently, prior to that, the Divine Wings flew across the stars, and the plumes that it refers to apparently also became stars, never to return to land. And then this is when Tails starts to piece everything together, that the Divine Wings is Babylon Garden, the plumes that it refers to are the Arcs of the Cosmos, and this must mean that Babylon Garden actually is a spaceship if it flew across the stars. And the plumes also becoming stars is referring to them becoming meteors floating through space. And Knuckles goes on to read how the Babylonians left one of the plumes here, which is the Arc of the Cosmos that Jet took, and one somewhere to the east, which, as it turns out, Eggman and the Babylon Rogues just flew overhead and are heading east, so that's probably where they are. That's probably where Eggman found the Arc of the Cosmos that he used to power the mother computer. So if they just chased after them, they should be able to find what they're looking for. And eventually, after following for a while, they manage to run into the Babylon Rogues right at the entrance of Mediotech's headquarters. This is where Mediotech controls all of the robots from around the world, and obviously that means this is where the mother computer is. And this is where our characters realize that Eggman is nowhere near as innocent as he made himself out to be earlier. While the robot rampage was not caused by him, and it was actually the mother computer just going out of control, he was trying to get all the Arcs of the Cosmos anyway to try to control everything manually, so that way he could intentionally take control of all the robots around the world, and obviously use that for world domination. But of course Sonic is not going to let that happen, so it's time to put a stop to Eggman's schemes. But Jet's like, hold up there, Sonic. We're not done with each other, we still have our score to settle. So Jet proposes, of course, a race. First one to reach Eggman gets all the Arcs of the Cosmos, and the title of fastest in the world. Which, of course, Sonic is a-okay with that, sounds like fun. So all of our characters race their way through Mediotech's headquarters. Meanwhile, Eggman is just about to insert his 2 Arcs of the Cosmos into the mother computer's central system, but then Sonic and Jet at the exact same time rush into the room and once again send him flying, which also causes him to land on the computer and eject the main unit from the mother computer. This cancels out all of the robot commands, causing them to go berserk, and Eggman's like, no! The plan I've been working on for so long is all in ruins. Which, yeah, when you think about it, this whole thing would have taken, like, years to set up to establish a company and sell robots to so many different organizations all around the world to the point where this plan could even happen. How long has Eggman been working on this fucking thing? Anyway, Babylon Garden actually shows up as it reacts to having all 5 Arcs of the Cosmos in one location. And despite the fact that they ended up tying, Sonic decides to give his Arc of the Cosmos over to Jet, because he doesn't really care. But Jet is not at all satisfied with this, because they got a tie in their race toward Eggman, so their score is not settled. And Sonic is like, well, if you want to settle this, then I'll see you at the next X-World Grand Prix, my guy. And with that, Sonic is like, alright, we're done here. World is saved, no more rampaging robots, let's go home, everybody. And the Babylon Rogues take the Ark of the Cosmos to go head off and do whatever they plan on doing with them. But Tails is still worried about this whole thing. There's still something about it that doesn't feel right to him. Why did the ancient Babylonians seal away the Arks of the Cosmos they had? And what's all this deal with the lightless black? And why did the leader of the robots just explode for no reason? And just as Tails connects the dots and realizes that we can't let the Arks of the Cosmos near Babylon Garden, the leader of the robots shows up again, and he steals the Arks from the Babylon Rogues and makes his way toward the garden. And Tails is like, the reason the Babylonians sealed away the Arks of the Cosmos is because they couldn't fully control their power, and as it turns out, the thing that allows them to manipulate gravity is a black hole, and if all 5 of them are put back in Babylon Garden, it could create a black hole that could destroy the entire world. Which is exactly what the leader of the robots is doing right now. That's what the lightless black that the ancient Babylonians were referring to. And so, Babylon Garden sheds its shell that it accumulated during its time on Earth and returns to the spaceship that it originally was. And the black hole opens up and starts sucking in everything, and it's like, oh fuck, we're all screwed. What the hell can we do about this? Well, if we remove the Arks of the Cosmos from the core of Babylon Garden, then that should stop the black hole. And so everyone makes their way towards Babylon Garden to settle things once and for all, where the leader of the robots has somehow turned into a giant monster robot thing. I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but it's a video game, so we need a final boss fight. And of course, everybody works together to defeat this thing and stop Babylon Garden from going out of control with the black hole. And then to cap things off here, we have Wave asking Jet if this is alright. You know, the Babylonians are actually originally aliens from another planet. They could use Babylon Garden to explore the cosmos and potentially eventually return to their home planet. And Jet's like, yeah, I mean, that sounds cool, space exploration and all that, but this planet has its own charms. And of course, there's one thing on this planet that Jet still has to do. And then we catch up with Sonic's crew, where they're just kind of wondering about everything that happened and what were the Arks of the Cosmos really. Who made them? What was their purpose? It was probably the ancient Babylonians, but we can't really be sure. Maybe it was someone even more advanced than them even longer ago. Apparently, they had programmed into them a system that would cause the Arks of the Cosmos to come together that was activated when Eggman put the core one into his mother computer, which is what caused the meteors of the Arks of the Cosmos to fall from space. That's what all those shooting stars were earlier in the story. Those were the other 3 Arks coming down, being returned to Earth by the influence of the main unit. Can I just say, I actually like that Zero Gravity doesn't use the Chaos Emeralds. I mean, the Arks of the Cosmos, kind of functionally, from a plot perspective, are basically the same thing. We got a bunch of MacGuffins, and you need to get all of them in order to do the thing, but at the very least, we're not relying on the Chaos Emeralds like we did for the first Sonic Riders, so I like that. Anyway, Tails determines that long ago when the Babylonians made it to Earth, they probably detached the Arks of the Cosmos because they were about to go critical and create a black hole, and that shot them all across space, which then turned them into shooting stars, and perhaps the reason that people wish upon stars now is because the ancient Babylonians would see shooting stars and hope that they were the Arks of the Cosmos that would eventually land on Earth, and they could use them to return home one day. A little bit of a cheesy idea, but it's so wonderfully Sonic that I can't help but kinda love it. And of course, who is to show up but Jet, here to settle the score once and for all. And of course, Sonic is totally down with this, and we end Sonic Riders Zero Gravity with a race between Sonic and Jet. Yeah, I really like the rivalry between these two. I think this works really well. This is a perfect ending for a Sonic Riders game like this. Overall, I would say that the story of Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is pretty comparable to the first Sonic Riders. It's definitely quite a bit more epic than the first Riders was, with, you know, the robots rampaging and threatening the whole world, and then a giant black hole and all this crazy shit going on, and the revelations that the ancient Babylonians were aliens, which is kind of a crazy, weird thing to throw into Sonic, but it's different, it's unique. I don't really have a problem with it, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, once again, a fine little story for a race racing game. And I like that the story is very, like, appropriately Sonic in that kind of way, where Sonic just randomly stumbles across this weird rock in a meteor, and it turns out that it has weird gravity powers, and then he goes on a whole adventure because some sort of chaos is going on that's related to these things, and then it's eventually revealed that this is all part of a much larger and bigger thing, and you know, that cool thing that was just giving Sonic gravity powers, turns out it's actually like an engine part to an alien spaceship, and there's a whole bigger thing going on behind the scenes here. That's pretty cool, you know, going on that journey and learning everything. I do like that quite a bit. And I really do like Jet's kind of dead-set desire to beat Sonic no matter what, and Sonic's just like, hey man, come at me as many times as you want, it's fun every time. So yeah, the story of the first two Sonic Riders games, not bad. Not amazing, not great, but they work. They are decent. I enjoy them for what they are. But of course, we also have to talk about the story of Sonic Free Riders, the final Sonic Riders game, which, to be honest, I didn't even know the story of this game prior to making this video, because I've never played Sonic Free Riders, because it's a Kinect game, and I'm not gonna waste my time with that shit. And I never even bothered to look it up, because I assumed that the game just had a nothing story, which I was pretty much entirely correct on. First of all, while Sonic Riders and Zero Gravity have full-on cutscenes with a whole story, and sometimes you get the big fancy CG ones with the cool action and all that, Sonic Free Riders instead is done with incredibly shitty visual novel sequences that suck hard. And of course, not only is this a Kinect game, so they're not gonna give that much of a shit, but also, Sonic Free Riders came out in 2010, the dreaded year of 2010, where the Sonic series started to go downhill as far as storytelling goes, and by go downhill, I mean more like fell off a cliff. So, Sonic Free Riders basically has nothing going on here. Essentially, the story of the game is just, there's another X-World Grand Prix, and everybody's trying to win it, and that's like 90% of the story. There are a lot of cutscenes in the game, but it's literally just the characters having banter back and forth before and after their races, trash talking and shit like that. Very little of actual consequence happens here at all. The quickie version of it is that there's once again an X-World Grand Prix that Eggman is hosting, and for no particular reason, he's disguised himself as a king, which doesn't really matter at all, and I don't know why they bothered to put this in the story, but whatever. And whoever wins the X-World Grand Prix gets a reward of a bunch of cash and gems and treasure and shit. And of course, the Sonic crew and the Babylon Rogues are here to compete, but also, Sonic Free Riders has added 2 additional team stories into the game, Team Rose and Team Dark. However, they are not the Team Rose and Team Dark that we're familiar with, because the teams are Amy, Cream, and Vector, and Shadow Rouge and a random Eggman robot. I presume the reason for these teams is primarily just out of laziness, because Amy, Cream, Shadow, and Rouge already had Sonic Riders redesigns because they were in the previous games in the multiplayer modes, so you wouldn't have to bother making new versions for them, but then they're like, okay, well, we can't really have Big in Sonic Riders. He's not exactly the type of character that's got the skill and dexterity to be doing this kind of shit, so Vector, I guess, because Team Rose needs a power character, and who the hell else are we gonna use? And then the Eggman robot character is there for story purposes that I'll get into later, but it seems pretty shitty to not have Omega there. Although, really, the whole setup here is very contrived because of these characters. Like Vector, he's here because he wants the cash prize for winning the tournament. That works perfectly for his character, but you would think that if that's his motivation, then shouldn't the entire Chaotix be here as their own team? Wouldn't that make a lot more sense? Well, it would take a lot more work to make Espio and Charmy playable characters in the game, so fuck it. By the way, look at Vector in this game. They did like fucking nothing to give him a Riders redesign. So fucking lazy, man. And with Team Dark, my big question here is, why is Shadow participating in this at all? Like, Rouge, again, makes sense. She wants the gems for winning the tournament, but Shadow is not the kind of character to give even the slightest fuck about a sports competition. This is so out of his character to be even bothering to participate in something like this. You could maybe get away with, like, Rouge wants the prize and then she kind of convinces Shadow to go along with her on this. But that's not what they do. He's also here and he's also out to win instead of just not caring like he should be. In fact, now that I think about it, you could actually like kind of maybe do something there where at first Shadow is just here to help Rouge and he doesn't give a flying fuck about anything. He's just competing and just doesn't give a shit. But then, you know, he respects Sonic, so maybe he's out of curiosity watching Sonic's matches, and he's very impressed by Sonic's performance. And then, you know, eventually in the finals or whatever, he has to race with Sonic, and then, you know, he gets really into it of trying to beat Sonic and all that kind of stuff. And then you could have at the end where Rouge is like, geez, Shadow, I didn't think you'd get so into a competition like this. And, you know, Shadow could be a little, like, trying to dismiss everything and downplay that he actually was kind of getting really into trying to beat Sonic in this competition. You know, add a little bit of softness to Shadow. That could have been nice, but instead they decided to do absolutely nothing. And as far as the character interactions in this game goes, there's very little of substance here. There's, like, basically nothing of consequence that happens. Even like the interactions between Sonic and Jet of, you know, this is another X-World Grand Prix, it's an opportunity for Jet to finally beat Sonic. There's barely any of that here. They're just like, we're gonna get the prize money, Sonic, fuck you, and it's all really fucking stupid. The only part of any of the banter that I actually liked is when you play Team Dark and you beat the Babylon Rogues, then Rouge is like, wow, you guys are a bunch of thieves? I'm surprised you managed to steal anything when you're that slow, and it's like, oh, that's a sick burn. Good opportunity taking advantage of the fact that Rouge is also a treasure thief. That works pretty well, but the rest of the interactions are pretty negligible. And actually, Shadow and Rouge are, like, kind of way out of character in this game, because they're, like, massive assholes to everyone for no reason. They came to participate with just the two of them, and then they're like, oh, you need a third member to participate in the tournament, so they're like, hey, you, random robot, you're on our team now. And they show complete disregard for this robot, and he's, like, kind of breaking down from all the racing that he's doing at super high level, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, he's fine, and then he gets worse and worse. And Rouge is just like, well, I guess if he breaks down, then he's just spare parts at that point. And they're like, that's terrible. How could you say that about your teammate? You know, we actually care about our team, unlike you guys. And it's like, this is so wrong for fucking Shadow and Rouge of Team Dark. Their whole thing is like being a team with each other and the bond they built across like Sonic Heroes and a bunch of previous games. And like, whatever. It's a bunch of crap. Like I said, this was after the dark times of Sonic storytelling started. And then, you know, whatever team you pick, you win the tournament and blah, blah, blah. Who cares? And then you get the final story of the game where Eggman reveals that he's been monitoring everyone through E10000B, the robot on Team Dark, and he's been analyzing all their data and using it to create the perfect extreme gear calibrated to be the best gear ever, and with it, he can beat everybody. And then they beat Eggman in a race, and he's like, no, how could this happen? And it's like, this was Eggman's plan this whole fucking time. He just wanted to make an extreme gear that was better than everybody. What the fuck is the point of this? Why would he bother to do this? You know, in the previous Riders games, he was trying to, you know, take over the world like he normally does, but in this game, he wants to win a race for no reason because this game's story is stupid. But then, this is the only actually kind of cool part of the story of Sonic Free Riders. It's revealed that Eggman's data that he got from E10000B was all fucked up. That wasn't correct at all. That's why he lost. His gear wasn't actually good at all. And the reason for that is because E10000B in reality is Metal Sonic, and he has been holding on to all the racing data for himself and has been using it to learn how to become the best extreme gear rider in the universe. And of course, Metal Sonic wants to challenge Sonic to a race. That's actually a pretty cool idea. I actually like that. Like, that's Metal Sonic's whole thing, is wanting to beat Sonic in a race. And so it works perfectly fine for him to show up in the racing series and kind of interrupt everything with his shit. You know, it's like at the end of Zero Gravity, Sonic's like, we'll settle our rivalry at the next X-World Grand Prix. And now in this game we get to that X-World Grand Prix, but the whole thing gets overturned when Metal Sonic shows up and he's like, I'm here to race you, Sonic, once and for all, and of course he manages to lose, but I think that this is actually a pretty good use of Metal Sonic's character, and it actually kind of incorporates part of Metal's characterization from Sonic Heroes, which I'm stunned by. I thought that part of his character was totally dead by this point, but it's actually here in Sonic Free Riders, which is kind of cool. Though this is definitely way too close to the story of Sonic Heroes, like it's literally the same thing of Metal Sonic was secretly watching everyone, copying their data, and then using that so he could beat Sonic. That is, like, identical to the structure of Sonic Heroes, but other than that one problem, I do think that this is pretty cool. And, you know, this whole setup kind of works. Sonic and Jet's rivalry is put on hold once again, and then everything kind of comes to a close. And then, you know, we have an open door for Sonic and Jet to race once more in a potential fourth Sonic Riders that will never be made. So, you know, while it's completely fucking worthless and nothing, at the very last little bit there's actually kind of a slightly cool idea in the story of Sonic Free Riders, which is actually a hell of a lot more than I was expecting. So good on you, Sonic Free Riders. You were worth a brief mention in this story video instead of me just completely ignoring you, which is what I was originally expecting to do with this video. Of course, it is a giant shame that this is what we get for the third Sonic Riders story after the first two games had like way bigger and cooler stories. And with the fact that we're never going to get another Sonic Riders, we're never going to see another cool Sonic Riders story again, so this is all we got, unfortunately. Please, Sega, Sonic Team, whoever, make a new Sonic Riders game. I really want one. That would be really cool. Please and thank you. And that's it for me. That's enough talking about the story of Sonic Riders, so thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.